So what did I think of Kathryn Bigelow's latest film, A House of Dynamite? Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the awards contender. I wanted to have better news for you today when it comes to A House of Dynamite by just a fantastic director, Kathryn Bigelow, who I've looked up to, who I think is just one of the greats. I've enjoyed her films going all the way back to the 1980s. She's a very singular director. She makes really interesting, captivating films on her terms. So I was very excited to hear she had a new movie in 2025 premiering at the Venice Film Festival. I mean, it's been a while, guys. She had Detroit in 2017. Before that, you had The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, two of her finest films ever. She, of course, won the Oscar for Best Director for The Hurt Locker, the first woman to ever win Best Director. She is in the history books forever. Because she doesn't make too many movies, every time she has a new one at this point, it's kind of an event. And after this film got rave reviews at Venice a few weeks ago, I got very excited. I have tried everything to see this movie early, like before it reached Netflix. I hoped maybe I could see it on the big screen somewhere, and it just never happened. So with breakfast a few hours ago, I watched A House of Dynamite on Netflix. That was the only way I could watch it. I mean, I guess some people might say, well, you're not getting the full theatrical experience, right, Brian? You're just watching it at home. It might be different with a big crowd in a giant theater somewhere on a big screen. Sure, maybe that would have helped a little bit. But yeah, I am sorry to say, guys, I was disappointed in A House of Dynamite. This is not a bad film. There's a lot of really good things in it. And for a while, I thought it was pretty strong. And then it wasn't so strong anymore, as I'm going to talk about in this video. There will be some light spoilers here. I can't really review this movie without talking about the structure of the screenplay, like how the movie plays out. I won't tell you how it ends or anything. I won't go that far. But I do need to talk a little bit, about how the movie is edited and structured, so that will be a part of this review. The story of A House of Dynamite is pretty simple. You follow a lot of different characters over the course of a few minutes of a morning that starts like any other morning. We follow many people high up in government positions, like different rankings, people who have access to the president, people on military bases. Everyone is getting their morning started, and then they learn that a nuclear weapon has been launched toward the United States. At first, they think, oh, maybe it's just nothing, it's an error. This is nothing that's going to concern us very much. And then as the film goes along, they start to realize, oh my God, this is actually happening. This might decimate a US city. It is targeted toward Chicago, where 10 plus million people might die. And it's like, well, what do we do about it? Like, if this actually happened now in the United States, what would be the reaction? What would be the retaliation? How would all of the higher-ups in the government attack this crisis with everything at our disposal? That's kind of like the terror of this story. That's what gets you gripped for minute one. The first 30 to 35 minutes of this movie is great. Like the first act of A House of Dynamite, I was all in. I found it very compelling. The way it's shot and edited, the way we bounce around to some characters, I thought it was working really well for the first half hour or so. I would say our main eyes for that segment of the movie is Rebecca Ferguson and her character. She's like playing around with her kid at home who's sick and has to go to the doctor, and she wants to stay home, but she also has to get to work. And as she starts to realize, what is coming, how her family is going to be affected, it's just it's very scary, when you put yourself in this position, if this were actually happening. I don't think the government would let people know, oh, by the way, we're 5 minutes away from a nuclear warhead, landing on a major city. That would cause chaos. I don't think, they would know until it happens. So yeah, it's definitely a story to tell now, a story of some very terrifying implications of how the US government might not have enough at their disposal to attack this kind of force that could kill millions. There's things about this movie that are very good. I'm not going to discourage you from watching it. There was enough in it. I was like, well, do I give this a negative review? No, I'm going to give this a mixed review, kind of like a couple I've given on the channel in the last few weeks, where I don't really like or love it, I don't hate it, I don't dislike it. this one for me is in the middle. Because even though I was really taken with the opening of this, how things get started, the immersion in all of these characters, this is a film about process. I enjoy movies like about people at work, at their jobs, where you follow them in a moment of crisis when they're having like the most stressful day at their job they will ever have, right, in their entire lifetimes. The process element of this movie is pretty good. And you can feel Kathryn Bigelow's handprints all over this film. You know it's her. If this movie were screened for me and I knew nothing, like about who made it, who wrote it and everything, I would walk away with a very educated guess. I bet that was Kathryn Bigelow. So she definitely makes her mark on this. I like that about it. It's not like this could have just been made by anybody. It's definitely a Bigelow film. Like the way it's shot and edited, the way the tension revs up in those first 35 minutes, it's very Bigelow. So that's good too. But here's the fatal flaw about A House of Dynamite, guys. At about the 35-minute mark, we are getting close to, oh my God, there might actually be a detonation. Like something might actually happen to Chicago. My heart was racing a little bit. I was like, what is gonna happen next? I didn't read up on this movie at all. I did not know about the structure. Like I had heard a couple things about, oh, this actor comes into it later, but I didn't know exactly how this all plays out. It cuts to black. And then we go back in time, kind of like where the movie begins, but now we're going to see the same events play out through the eyes of different characters, at different levels of government, in different places. All of the tension is erased. It's not as compelling as it goes along. You kind of feel like you've been there, done that, and because the movie never takes too much time with any specific character, there's not someone we can fully get behind. And so especially by the final 30 to 40 minutes, you're just going through the motions. You know what's going to happen beat for beat because we've been through it twice before. And now we're spending time with a couple other characters that are interesting and things, but it is not as captivating toward the end as it should be. This movie needs in the final half hour to be very suspenseful, and it's not at all. It's like, wow, this actually works better as a 30-minute short film. If the entire movie was just that first part, I would probably recommend it because it's well done, it has a lot of tension all the way to that cut to black. But then the rest of the film, it almost feels like, well, we got to get it to an hour and 45 minutes. Let's go to these other characters, see how they react to this horrific news and what might happen. And it just started to lose me after a while. And when we got to the third act, I was just like, okay, I see why we're doing this because there's so many people. And it is kind of clever, early on, you just hear a voice of an actor, of a character, and then later you can see them in action. So there is that element to it. But I just felt like the approach to this story needed more tension. It needed to be more streamlined. I do think this movie works way better if it's just a linear time structure where we're not hopping back and forth in time. We just have it play out all the way to that final pivotal scary moment. I think that would have been better for this. The tension would have kept going up, 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 up to the last 20 minutes. And then it would have been just excruciating for the audience. I think that would have worked better, even though the time frame of the movie is only about 20 minutes in terms of how much time passes, maybe a little more, people starting their day and getting to work. Maybe it's 30 to 40 minutes, something around there. I just don't think the back and forth, having that happen 3 times, all the way to the end, it didn't fully work as a successful narrative for me. And the very final moment of this movie is a total womp womp. It does not end on a satisfactory note. When it cut to the title and directed by Kathryn Bigelow, I was like, that's it? I was like, wow, really? It wraps up on a very unsatisfactory note, and that is not common for Kathryn Bigelow. 2 of the best final moments, endings of movies we've had in the last 20 years are The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30. The final beats of those stories are perfection. They have you walking out of the theater emotional, compelled, in love with cinema. You know Kathryn Bigelow is firing on all cylinders in The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, and you don't get that sense near the end of A House of Dynamite. And that disappointed me too. The ending of this film doesn't work very well. And so especially in a story like this, with this kind of subject matter, this kind of intense crisis at its core, like there should be more suspense in the final 30 minutes, and there's not. So I wasn't too happy about that. And the other big thing with this, guys, is I just felt at the end of this, especially with a fairly brief running time, I think in full it's like an hour and 55 minutes. Without credits, I think it's like an hour and 40 to an hour and 45. It's brief enough that I was like, there's just too many characters in this. I understand the need to not have this be one person's story. It didn't have to just be Rebecca Ferguson's character story all the way through. Every moment of this narrative we are seeing through her eyes. She is the lead, the protagonist. It didn't have to be that way. I understand because of the subject matter and what's happening, it makes sense to bounce around to different places, different positions, immerse us in this moment. Like, how would this actually play out with a variety of higher ups in the government? I get that, but you don't really spend enough time with any one character, so by the end, your hands kind of close on air. You haven't really come to know anybody in the narrative, and it ends on a pretty ambiguous note, so I'm just like, okay, what are we taking away from this? If it was just a really compelling filmmaking exercise in tension, and that's everything Bigelow was going for, it also fails on that front. So I don't know. I mean, there's not really anything to talk about in the performances in this movie. Nobody in A House of Dynamite is going to be nominated anywhere. Everybody's really good and solid. There's not a bad performance in the movie. There's just not enough time spent with any one character. Idris Elba, like, he has a few moments. Rebecca Ferguson, I do think, is the MVP. Like her moments early on, I think, are really good. But I started to miss her after a while. I don't know how you will feel about that. I wanted more of her in the movie. She didn't have to be the protagonist, like a Jessica Chastain in Zero Dark 30 or something. But her character was the one that really spoke to me, especially with her kid who's sick and her husband and her trying to figure out her day as she navigates this crisis. Like, there could have been more done with her, I think. And that's why the linear time structure, bouncing around to everybody all throughout the movie and not going back and forth in time, I think would have helped add more to her character, maybe add a couple more scenes with her toward the end would have helped the movie. Jared Harris has one incredible scene, and I was like, man, more with him. Like, Greta Lee is in this movie. Greta Lee, who I love. Anytime she pops up in something, film or TV, I get very excited. And she does almost nothing in this. She has like one scene where she talks to someone on a phone. You see her briefly a few moments later, and that's it. And I'm like, okay, like maybe her position is one of importance. You have to see that in the film and the screenplay and stuff. Maybe that makes sense. But it's like, why have Greta Lee show up just for this very bit part and not do anything else with her? I don't know. I think this cast of characters could have been pared down by about half. I do think that would have helped this movie a lot, given it a little bit more focus as the narrative continued on. I think to make this movie work also, it needed to be longer. It just felt too brief when it wrapped up. I was like, that's it? Not to say it needed to be 3 hours long, but I think adding an extra 30 to 40 minutes to this might have helped. It does feel like we're missing something when it ends. I don't think A House of Dynamite, guys, is going to be much of an awards player. Maybe it'll show up a few places, maybe like in ensemble categories it might get in. You know, there is the casting category this year. I thought about that a few minutes ago. I was like, maybe casting, although that category is pretty competitive. I don't think that would happen. You have editing. I think editing could maybe happen for it at the Oscars because the editing is noticeable, you know, but I don't see it getting into picture, director, and acting category. September 5, which has a couple similarities to this, like the big ensemble and the crisis and stuff. Like, that got a lone Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay. Maybe that could happen for A House of Dynamite. maybe like in a 5th place slot, it sneaks in there just to give the movie something at the Oscars. It wouldn't be a huge shocker, but I don't know. That category is also competitive. So if I had to make an educated guess right now, I don't think A House of Dynamite gets a single Oscar nomination. I don't think it gets anything. I just don't think it's strong enough. I think the screenplay, the structure of this story, does it no favors, and by the end, it's hard to get really excited about this one, enthusiastic about A House of Dynamite. I am kind of shocked at all of the huge praise for this that came out of Venice, honestly. Like, really? Like, I remember that day, and like all the word online was super positive, saying she was back, this was a return to form. This is nowhere in the league of The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30. Not to mention her many other wonderful films in the 80s and 90s and stuff. This is like a step down, I think, for Bigelow. This is not one of her better films. So I can't come on here and say, well, I like the cinematography, the handheld, the immersion into this crisis. There are things to like about it, and if you have Netflix, you know, it's a fast watch. It's like an hour and 45 minutes. If you have the time, it's definitely worth a look. Like, Bigelow doesn't make a ton of movies, and if you admire her work, you kind of need to watch it once, you know? It's not a bad film. You're not like, oh my God, I wasted my life the last hour and 45 minutes. It just could have been so much more. This could have been really exciting, really suspenseful, terrifying, where at the end you cannot look away. And that's not the movie this turned out to be. So I am sad to give you this report. I really wanted to come on here reviewing A House of Dynamite, Kathryn Bigelow's latest, and give it an 8 or a 9 out of 10, say it's a must watch, a definite Oscar contender. But that's not the truth, guys. I still love Kathryn Bigelow. I look forward to her next film. I know she has another masterpiece in her. I know she can make something truly special, but that film is not A House of Dynamite. I am sorry to say, guys, this was a big disappointment. I give it a 5 out of 10.